My name is Dr. Douglas Owens. I teach multiple woodwinds at Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado. And I would like to extend my congratulations to you for choosing bassoon to play in band and orchestra. Well, let me tell you a little bit about why I like bassoon. I think bassoon has a really awesome timbre that is sound quality. Not only do you get to play a lot of really cool low register stuff, but you also get to play a lot of very expressive higher register solos that are going to help your development as a musician and as a bassoonist. So enjoy. You've got a lot to look forward to. So we're going to talk about how to put the bassoon together now. The bassoon comes in what looks like about 1 billion parts. So we're going to go ahead and cycle through each of those. But before we do that, dipping your reeds in water is much faster than having it in your mouth. So one of the things that I strongly recommend is that you thoroughly soak your reeds, but not too much. What we're going to do is we're going to open up the case. And as with most cases, there's a right way and a wrong way to open it. Make sure that the bottom of the case is on the bottom of whatever you're setting the case on, and that the top of the case is what opens, because you don't want to have the bassoon fall out over the floor. So in my particular case, the top part is thinner, the bottom part is thicker. And the latch is open in a way where there's little doubt as to where the top of the case is. So there we go. We got a bassoon case and we're looking at a bassoon right now. Okay, so the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to access your seat strap. This is a seat strap right here. You actually may have what's called a boot strap. Now the boot strap is a little bit different from the seat strap because what the boot strap does is there is a cover that actually fits over this portion of the bassoon. I like seat straps better with these hooks right here, because with a boot strap you may get some interference with the pads, which we'll talk about later. But with a seat strap, you basically take it and set it under you, like so, with the hook end sticking out of the right side and the long end here. And you can adjust this to the left or to the right, whatever way you need to adjust, depending on your height, depending on where the bassoon's going to fall. So let's do one thing at a time. Let's go ahead and take out, this is called the boot joint, the bottom joint of the instrument. Let's go ahead and latch it on to the seat strap. Now right now, while supporting the boot strap, what I want you to do is go ahead and take out what's known as the long joint. You can tell because it's the longest joint on the instrument. And I want you to insert it into the boot joint. Now some people put the long joint and the wing joint in the opposite order from me, but either way is fine, just so they interlock, which I'll show you in just a second what I'm talking about. So while supporting the bassoon, go ahead and grab your wing joint and put it right next to the long joint. Now I spoke earlier about having the two joints interlock. My particular bassoon has a lock mechanism. Some bassoons don't, so you got to fidget with them a little bit more. But in my lock mechanism, basically all I do is I lower this and I line the lock up with the wing joint. I'll show you again. There it is. And now they're locked and held together in position. So now we've got most of the bassoon figured out. Go ahead and take the bell of the instrument, otherwise known as the bell joint, out of the case. Hold down what this is called the low B flat key. Hold this down and make sure you're not getting any metal on metal. And you can line it up with this lever and that's going to be how you play the lowest note, which we won't get to today, but making sure that this is lined up together. Okay, so the next part that we add is what's called the vocal. Basically French for neck. Same thing as a neck on a saxophone, the thing that kind of curves like this that you see our saxophone buddies play. Now, I've got to talk about this vocal for a second. This is very soft, very thin metal, so you've got to be really, really careful with it. Make sure that the cork on the vocal is very lubricated. What this does is it makes contact in the upper hole of the wing joint, like so. If it's not lubricated and you've got to put a lot of pressure down on this, then you may bend your vocal. And to be completely honest, I've done that before and I can tell you it's expensive to fix. So be really careful with that. Learn something from me. Don't make my same mistakes. You know, make sure that that's lubricated and you can put that in. Also, make sure that this little thing sticking out right here doesn't collide with this guy right here. This is called the whisper key right here. And with the whisper key, if this scratches into this, there's a pad right here that can be ripped off if you're not really careful. So again, be very, 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 very careful putting the vocal in. Now, the very last thing you do with the bassoon assembly is put the reed on. You'll notice that at the end of the reed, there's a hole. That hole fits on the end of the vocal, like so. Now make sure that the reed and the vocal have a nice snug connection, because if you don't, the reed may actually, and again, this has happened to me before, the reed may actually fall off during performance, and you don't want that to happen. So make sure that's a snug fit right there. So the parts again, reed, vocal, bell, long joint, wing joint, boot joint, and seat strap. As a bassoonist, breathing and posture are two incredibly important aspects to proper tone production. As far as posture, let's think for a moment about our respiratory system. That is to say, the system of the body that enables us to breathe, to take in oxygen that we need to survive. We have our mouth, we have our windpipe, we have our lungs. Our windpipe is what gets that air from our mouth or our nose to our lungs. Think about that windpipe like a garden hose. If you do that, then you can see if that garden hose is in any way twisted or bent or tied together, right? That water can't flow through it the right way. It's the same thing with our windpipe. If we're slouched over, if we're bent back, if we're doing some kind of odd posture with our body, then air doesn't flow optimally between when we intake it and between the time that it gets into our lungs. So it's very important to sit up straight, keep the torso straight, keep the head as straight and as straightforward as possible. Now, what you also may have heard about posture is keeping both feet flat on the floor. Now, what this does is it enables our guts to be in the right place. If we sit there and do this, or even this, it changes the way that our midsection pushes up into our lung section. Make sure that you're sitting both feet flat on the floor as well as sitting up straight. Now let's talk about a few things that are specific to bassoon posture. This seat strap is a great invention. It takes a lot of weight off of either our necks or our hands by supporting most of the weight down here on the boot joint. You've got to be really careful though with the seat strap that it's adjusted the right way. If the seat strap is adjusted too low, look at what happens. I have to crane my neck forward and down to reach the reed. if my seat strap is too far this way. If my seat strap isn't far enough, then I have to crane my neck up to get to that. You know, I talked about with a windpipe that you want to have this clear path for the air to get through. And the clearest path is with the head forward, kind of like this. So make sure that your seat strap is adjusted the right way. Now, with regards to breathing, let me ask you this. Where do we get our air from? How do we take our air in? Well, one of two places, right? Through the nose or through the mouth. Let me show you something. I'm going to breathe in once through my nose, once through my mouth. And I want you to guess which one I'm taking more air through. Or, same amount of time, I guarantee you if you did that on your own, that you would find that you'd be taking a lot more air through the mouth. That's the way you need to breathe when you're playing any wind instrument, specifically in this case, bassoon. You need to breathe in through your mouth, whether that be at the beginning of a note or whether it be in a short rest, an eighth note or a quarter note rest that you may have in the middle of a phrase. So mouth breathing, number one. Number two is the depth of breathing. Well, what am I talking about? I know you've seen people do this before. Okay, what raised on me? My shoulders, right? My shoulders went up, actually. What happens when your shoulders go up? Well, if this goes up, something has to squish, and that's my lungs. My lungs are actually getting smaller because my body's having to stretch to make those shoulders go up. You think that's good for breathing? No, it's really not. There's a better way to do it. I'm going to put my bassoon down to show you this one. This is what I call deep breathing. And this is the most natural form of breathing. I guarantee you, if you weren't playing an instrument, this is the way you would breathe ordinarily. Put your fingers right here. And I want you to breathe in such a way that these fingers separate. Watch me. I had a band director who used to make us do that before every rehearsal. It was the greatest trick in the world because it shows you a couple of really cool things about breathing. One of the words you may have already heard your band director use, if you haven't heard he or she use it yet, you may be hearing it in the very near future. Diaphragmatic breathing. Okay, what is the diaphragm? Diaphragm is actually an involuntary muscle between the lungs and our stomach. What that does is if we're breathing deeply and breathing properly, it actually goes down like this. And what does it do? It pushes the guts out of the way in order to make room for the lungs to fill up properly. Watch me do this again. Try it on your own. That's the type of breathing we need to have when we're playing a wind instrument. So breathing in with your mouth and deep diaphragmatic breathing. Give it a try on your own. Basic bassoon fingerings can be a little bit different than any other member of the woodwind family due to the complexity of the instrument. Fingers on the bassoon that are doing things are not very common on other instruments in the woodwind family to have active roles in standard fingerings. The best example of that is the left thumb. Now, one of the first notes that you'll learn is F, which uses this key with the left thumb. If you look, there are actually 8 other keys that can be pressed. Some of those are for low notes, some of those are for higher notes. We won't talk about those right now, but just realize that with the left thumb, the most frequently played note is F. And this finger is actually held down for most of the notes that are lower in pitch than this. The first finger in the left hand covers the first tone hole. Second finger covers the second tone hole. Third covers the third tone hole. The pinky has the job of playing with one of these two keys. We'll talk about one of them momentarily, but the other is a lower note that we won't be addressing in this video. In the right hand, the same basic scheme applies. First finger goes to the first tone hole, second to the second. The third finger is a little different. There are two keys. The third finger, most of the time, 99.9% of the time, will go to the longer, fatter key right here instead of right here. The pinky in the right hand is also a pretty busy digit, having 3 potential keys that it can play on. Also, the right thumb can be used for one of 4 different keys. So you may have heard that the bassoon is a very thumb-oriented instrument. Well, it's absolutely true. You have to use your thumbs very, very, very frequently on bassoon to have facility in the entire register of the horn. Hey, I know you're really eager to make those first sounds on the bassoon. Why wouldn't you be? It's a great sounding instrument. Let's talk for a second about some things that you should do before trying to make those first sounds. First of all, what we need to do is we need to talk a little bit about our embouchure when we play bassoon. Embouchure is a fancy foreign word meaning mouth muscles. So how to control our mouth muscles on the bassoon? Let's start off by taking just the reed alone. Now, what I think of when I think of the proper bassoon embouchure is think of an ooh syllable. So, while thinking that ooh syllable, go ahead and put the reed in the mouth and blow and see what happens. Something like that should happen. Your sound might not be as crazy as mine is on the reed alone right now, but it should sound something like that, and you should definitely be able to make a sound. If you're not making a sound, it probably means a couple of things. It might mean you're biting too hard, or something like that, or that your reed's not soaked up enough. But yeah, if you're making that ooh sound and your reed's right, you should sound something like that. So now, stick the reed on the instrument. And why don't you go ahead, I've already talked about fingerings a little bit, why don't you go ahead and put your thumb, left thumb, down on that what I said was F. Remember this key down here. Why don't you go ahead and put your thumb there, make that ooh embouchure, and blow the same way. Something like that. Put a lot of air through the horn. Don't hesitate in making a big sound. So if you're putting a lot of air through, your reed's right, your embouchure's right, you should probably be able to make a nice, characteristic first sound on the bassoon. Give it a try.